Good morning, everybody, and welcome to PSG of Mercer County. And of course, happy Aloha Friday. So if you're visiting us for the first time, yes, I do wear Hawaiian shirts on Friday. It's just my thing. And one thing that the COVID has allowed, of course, is even if it gets cold this winter, which of course it's probably going to do, I'll be indoors with my Hawaiian shirt, so it'll be nice and comfy. So, PSG of Mercer County, we're a group that is here for you, anybody that is in any kind of career transition. And we are here to make your job search more efficient and effective. We can't promise finding you a job, although we've got some new utilities that may help with that, but we do certainly give you the information for you so you can be more efficient and effective in your job search. In addition to being Aloha Friday, it is Happy Friday the 13th. So I don't know if anybody is superstitious. I'm not. So after the meeting's over, I'm going to take my black cat, walk on some broken mirror under my ladder, and just put it to the test one more time. Also today, the 13th, is Karen Johnson. It's her birthday today, and she can now file for Medicare. She is 65 years old. If you don't know who Karen Johnson is, her stage name is Whoopi Goldberg. So Whoopi Goldberg turned 65 years old today. And talk show host Jimmy Kimmel is 53 today. So they have Friday the 13th birthdays, and hopefully they'll have lots of good luck through the rest of their lives as well. Among the products and services and that we offer to anybody who's in a career transition, we do have our LinkedIn group. So please go on to LinkedIn, look for our group. It is called PSG of Mercer County. We have over 1,600 members. Everyone has been to at least one of our meetings. So these are job seekers. These are people that understand job seeking. They'll share articles and job leads and all sorts of good things. So hopefully you'll get some good value joining our LinkedIn group. If you and I have not yet met, just send me a quick email letting me know that you attended today. The reason why is we only accept into our LinkedIn group anyone that has been to our in-person meetings. We're just trying to keep the list collectors, the name collectors out of the group as best as we can. So just look for the group. It is called PSG of Mercer County. When you get to the group page, click the join or join group button. And later or early in the week, I will be going through that and just accepting anyone who I know. I'll check our attendance records and know that you've been in the group. Or like I said, you can send me an email at psgmercercounty@gmail.com. psg@mercercounty@gmail.com. Just let me know that you signed up for the group and you were at one of our meetings. We also have our website, psgofmercercounty.org. So please take a look at that. Everything we do, of course, is PSG of Mercer County, so psgofmercercounty.org. I've been talking about our open jobs page or our jobs posting page for the past few weeks. And we now have 2 recruiters that are signed up to post, although we only have 1 posting from them right now. But we also have 20 job postings. And 20 that are real. One is a sample. The first one is a sample. It was to show people how to post. So please take a look at our website, psgofmercercounty.org. And what happens is you will look at the tab in the center called Open Jobs, and in there is a link for postings. And so you'll take a look at that. We have 20 real job postings, anywhere from clerk level up to there's a COO position in the pharma industry, I think it is. So go take a look, see if there are some postings there. We are now making that a free service for recruiters and HR people to post, and we'll hope that they'll get more active. And of course, for any of our job-seeking members to see if they can find positions. Completely free to use. And there is a post sign-up function. So just put your email address in there, and you should be getting emails about upcoming postings. So that's what we have coming up. As we get ready for our presentation in a moment, I will remind you, please keep yourself muted. There are a couple people that are not yet mute, so I'll just take care of that also. And so I will take care of that during the program as best as possible. but keep your microphone muted. Your camera, leave it on if you like, or leave it off if you like. It's up to you. And at the end of the presentation, at the end of our meeting, what we will do is keep the meeting going for probably an extra 30 or 40 minutes to do open networking. And there you can keep your mic open. But during the presentation, keep the mic off. And we will be using chat for questions. And chat is in the upper right corner. There's a couple of icons. One looks like a cartoon call out, a little circle with a tab. And so in there is chat. So what you can do is type your questions to Bill in chat. And when you do that, do write the word or type the word question right in front of it. And the reason why is we tend to get a lot of comments in our chats, which is good. And I want to make sure that we don't miss any questions. And if you just write question and then write your question, it'll stand out a lot better for us. And the Q&A format is going to be essentially after each slide. So as I see questions, I'll be monitoring the chat. As I see questions, at the end of each slide that Bill presents, I will just say, excuse me, Bill, we have a question or two, and he will read them and take them right then. So we're gonna make this as interactive as we can. And that's what we're gonna do. Okay, so that's who we are. So PSG of Mercer County is very pleased to welcome this morning career coach and mentor, Bill Amirault. Bill has helped hundreds of motivated professionals find their next job or make a career change very quickly with proven tools and one-on-one insights that highlight each person's unique value and passion. Prior to coaching, Bill had an extensive career in marketing, brand management, consulting, and advertising with several CPG, pharmaceutical, and healthcare companies, including Procter & Gamble, Schering-Plough, Johnson & Johnson, and Del Monte Foods. Bill has an undergraduate degree in industrial engineering from Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute and an MBA from Indiana University, where he was graduate assistant career counselor in one of the leading on-campus business placement offices in the US. He's always been active in sports and community activities. Bill and his coaching colleague, Henry Lesher, are publishing their first book called Finding God's Purpose for Your Career. PSG of Mercer County is pleased to welcome back career coach and mentor, Bill Amirault.
Well, thanks for that introduction, and good morning, everybody, on a kind of dreary Friday the 13th day. Hopefully, in the next hour or so, we'll give you some information and some approaches that I think will be really valuable to you, not just in your job search, but hopefully through the rest of your life. As David mentioned, my colleague Henry Lesher and I are publishing a book here shortly, likely by the end of the month, certainly early December, called Finding God's Purpose for Your Career. And it's been a labor of love, a longer project than I thought. But getting right into the presentation, let me make sure I'm doing this here. A little bit of background on me. What I want to go to is, this is intended to be interactive, so I want to make sure that your own search goals, strategy, and potential reinvention are brought up. And you can bring those up as part of the conversation, like David mentioned. What is the job market today? All of you are very familiar with what that means. And then several of the rest of the 4 bullet points there are memes that I pulled off the internet that happen to align with what the theme of this presentation is. But again, trials and tribulations, fear and obstacles, the importance of being resilient. Last week, Joey Himmelfarb spoke about attitude, and frankly, attitude is the umbrella over all of these, and I'll give a mention to that as well. And what are the best days of your life? They're probably in front of you as opposed to behind you. So a little bit of background. David mentioned marketing, brand management, advertising with several of the companies that you see there. Always been active in sports, played competitive sports since I was 6 years old. I still play in an age-appropriate competitive basketball league. You will not see us on ESPN anytime soon, I promise you, but it keeps the blood moving, and it also is fun to play with some referees and blowing whistles. I've been career counseling and coaching really since the 80s. I was very fortunate to get an assistantship, a graduate assistantship at the Indiana University Business Placement Office. There were 2,000 undergrads that finished every year there, and about 700 companies that would come to recruit. So it was like Grand Central Station. And after all those years doing marketing, brand management, advertising, and consulting, my colleague Henry asked me to come back and help him at a job fair in Parsippany, New Jersey. I've probably done about 250 job fairs since then in 5 states. And as I mentioned earlier, we're publishing this book in the next few weeks. So how many of you right now are employed or generating an income or in transition or have had a life event? I've worked with clients who have had to take care of an elderly parent, have a child that's going through some major medical trauma, whatever it might be. There are always reasons why you're moving from one position to another or one stage of your life to another. And what I have found is, I found this probably about 8 or 9 years ago. It's like, okay, a good combination of what you love, what you're good at, and what pays well. That sounds like a really good thing to be aspiring to. But then I found a better one, which focuses on the word ikigai, which is a Japanese concept. And what it really means is reason for getting out of bed. So let's call it purpose. And that's a little closer to the word dharma. And the combination of all of these is what I've found to be the most effective target for anybody that I've been working with. What is it that you love doing? What are you good at? What does the world need? And what can you be paid for? And that doesn't mean a paltry salary. You should be able to do more than just survive on what it is that you're really good at and what you enjoy doing. I ask this to almost every client that I work with, depending on whether it's just a quick meeting or not. What's your purpose? What's your mission? And what are your objectives? I imagine that the majority of you have done some version of this for your own work in the business world. I probably put together 50 or 60 business plans during a marketing brand management career, and it was always started with, what are you trying to accomplish? And I've added to that on the bottom there, why were you created? Okay, because my personal belief is that God put us all here for a variety of reasons. Career is one of the most important. So it's up to us to figure out and manifest what those reasons are in the best way that we can. And the little meme there is, don't downgrade your dream to fit your reality, upgrade your conviction to match your destiny. So grade yourself on these. I'm not going to go into all the blocking and tackling, as they say, of job search, but I'm going to cover them very briefly here for a few minutes. How clear is your value proposition and your skills? Does your resume have a positioning statement that really stands out versus your competition? Is your resume clear, compelling, and concise? And I say this to probably 90% of the people that I work with who don't understand the difference of this. You need to focus on your accomplishments, what you've done to add value, and what are your points of difference. Nobody cares about what your duties, responsibilities, and activities are. That's one of the key things that I find in terms of people representing themselves. And now you're talking to a marketing guy. If you're not properly positioned, you're not going to have the best impact on your target audience. So I'll leave it at that for right now. There's a lot more to go into on that. But it all lines up with, what are you telling people you can do? How can you back it up? And what does that mean about how you can be of value to them? Does your LinkedIn profile reflect all of that? Your LinkedIn profile is clearly not a resume, but it does have all the keyword phrases so that recruiters and hiring managers who put those keyword phrases in, usually 7 to 10 of them, and they do a search, will you show up? And that's a really important thing about a LinkedIn profile. LinkedIn also can be much more personalized. Resume is always in the third person, but you can put some aspects about yourself, both from your personal life, your philosophies, et cetera, et cetera. Again, how do those add value to what you're going to bring to the party? Cover letter and follow-up all need to be aligned with the branding that you create on your resume and LinkedIn profile. So one of the first things that I speak to about with people is, what are your skills? And the slide that I'm going to show you next is not going to get you a job. It's a little entertaining. Okay, but I would say to you is, if you can provide a better description of your skills than what this woman did, you're going to have a much better chance. So the second phase of job search is called outreach or prospecting. And every salesperson goes through this process, either through cold calling, warm leads, doing the research and finding the appropriate people, whatever that might mean. For those of you who are doing your job search with online applications, just remember that the response rate is just 3 to 5%, 1 out of 20 to 1 out of 30. Arguably, you could buy a lottery ticket and have better odds than that. I always recommend to people that if it's required to do the online submission, that you do that, but figure out a way to get in the side door so you can get in front of the hiring manager, get on top of that pile of resumes, as opposed to getting filtered out by an applicant tracking system. So as far as your media plan is concerned, how are you getting your right credentials in front of hiring managers, recruiters, industry expert, networking groups like this one, and other nonprofit associations that may be affiliated with your area of expertise? This is one of the most important aspects of finding the right position with the right person. Are you in the right geography? Geography, of course, has changed recently because you can work from anywhere. And why are the roles that you're looking for a good fit? This is clearly one of the most important things, particularly if you're making a career transition. Can you have a logical move from where you are now to where you want to be? And will the person on the other side of the desk or on the other side of the Zoom call be convinced of that? There are some, let's just say, out-of-the-box job search methods. I found this on LinkedIn several years ago, and I still find it to be incredibly amusing. I don't know if this is accurate or not, but it's somebody over in the UK. I refer to the recent death of the technical manager at your company and hereby apply for the replacement of the deceased manager. Each time I apply for a job, I get a reply that there is no vacancy, but in this case, I've caught you red-handed. And you have no excuse because I even attended the funeral to be sure that he was truly dead and buried before applying. Attached to my letter is a copy of my CV and his death certificate. Again, not sure how you're going about job search, but people do it in all kinds of different ways. I mean, you've probably seen the article about the guy who was on Wall Street with a billboard. I mean, there are numbers of different ways to do it, and anything short of being totally obnoxious, in my mind, is a good way to get in front of the hiring manager. Interviewing and negotiating, which is phase 3 of job search, called closing the deal, depending on what your perspective is. Who do you know that may have connections inside and outside the company that you're working with? A quick story about a guy that I play basketball with. About 3 years ago, he got a call from a former colleague who said, "Hey, Jeff, let's get together for a drink." And they went through the old company business and they talked about their families, etc. And then Jeff's friend said this to him: "You know, Jeff, the real reason I called you here is that I interviewed for a position in New Jersey, about 20 minutes from where you live. And during the course of the interviews, I got a promotion at my current company. So I just didn't think it was the right time to leave. But you're the first person I thought of. Would you be interested?" And Jeff, who, by the way, had been commuting to Manhattan an hour and a half one way for 20 years, said, 20 minutes from home? You bet. 4 weeks later, he was in the vice president's chair in that new company, based on the recommendation of somebody who didn't even work there. So I would suggest to you that everybody on this call has former colleagues, bosses, clients, vendors, committee members, friends, however it is that you know people, who know 2 things about you. Number 1, what you can do, and number 2, that you're probably available. So it's important to make sure that those advocates are aware of what your job search approach is going to be, and then it's okay to ask them for advice. I don't recommend asking for help because you probably won't get it, but if you ask for advice, oftentimes you will. Do your skills match what it is that the position or that the company may need? I mean, you may read an article in one of the publications that just says company expanding, introducing new product lines, moving to a new production facility 10 miles from where you live. You know that they're going to be hiring. Get inside the door and find those people before they start posting position and it becomes a free-for-all. One of the things I've found in interviews, when I do mock interviews, and Alex, who is on the line, has done many, many more of these than I have, what does "tell me about yourself" mean? Unfortunately, a lot of people think it's just the opportunity to talk about their background and their elevator pitch, and they give 60 to 90 seconds, maybe more, but it may not have any relevance to what's really going on in that interview. So one of the things I do is I say to people, find out what it is that they really need. So you really want to find out how you can add value by growing revenues, cutting costs, solving or preventing big problems, and being a solid team player or somebody who's good to work with to solve the other things that may be happening. One of the responses that I found to be extremely effective goes like this. When somebody says, "Tell me about yourself," you say, "You know, there are a lot of aspects of my background that might be relevant to this position. Which ones would be the most helpful to talk about to solve the issues you're facing right now?" If you say something like that in a sincere, upfront manner, you do 2 things. Number 1, you tell the person that you're there to help. Number 2, and this is probably more important, is that you get that person to talk to you about the key issues that they're facing and what you're going to be expected to do. If you do that in the first 5 minutes, you can get right to the point of why different parts of your background can help them with their issues, as opposed to going round and round in circles and waiting 30, 35, 40 minutes to get to the key issues that you're going to be handling. The other thing that happens if you do something like that and you make the interviewer really tell you what's going on, and which would be beyond the job description, is that you may find in the first few minutes that you have no real interest in that position. Again, that's a whole lot better to find out in the first few minutes than it would be a half an hour or more down the road. So again, as far as your skills are concerned, be able to demonstrate them in a way that's going to be meaningful for the position that you're there to speak about, even when you're speaking about your leadership skills. So closing the deal, how effective are you as a negotiator? A lot of people think they can negotiate, but they really don't have the handle on it. What I have found to be the most important thing about negotiations is not the absolute salary number, the benefits, the bonuses, the incentives, or whatever it might be. The key part of negotiation is specifically what does the job entail and what will you be responsible for. And hear what I'm saying. A couple of years ago, I had a client who had background in manufacturing, logistics, and for some other reason, marketing. And the company that he was interviewing with needed all three. So instead of hiring 3 mid-level managers, he convinced them to hire him as a senior level manager, and he brought a couple other people in to handle it and save the company about $100,000 in salary. If you negotiate what the actual specifics are of the job, then you can get your value raised based on what your real ability is, as opposed to having to do like a real estate transaction. You know, are we agreeing on the price? And that's really not where you want to be. I'll give you a quick story. Back in college, I came home from my junior year and did not have a position or it's a summer job. A guy that I played baseball with said, come sell Kirby vacuum cleaners with us. And it was a lot of rah-rah meetings and everything else, but there was a lot of learning involved. Because during the presentations, we'd go in and we'd say, Mrs. Johnson, this Kirby vacuum cleaner comes with a rug shampooer, obviously a vacuum cleaner, all these accessories that if you were to buy them separately would cost you $1,645 in the open market. But you can get this all-in-one Kirby vacuum cleaner today for $595. Now, I don't want to sound like a used car salesman, particularly in an interview, but that said, the value there is obvious. If the person really wants the features and the benefits that you can provide, and you can do it in an appropriate value or compensation value for them, you put yourself in a much better situation. Okay, so how many of you are in sales?
Excuse me, Bill.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yep, so there's one question that came in. I see the title of the slides changed. So this is from Joey, who wrote, any suggestions about getting in the side door?
Yeah, the biggest thing is 2 ways. If you know people in the company, that's the first place to start. The second way is find people on LinkedIn, connect with them, start creating conversations around your area of expertise. And then it's kind of like a forensics study, if you will. There are numerous ways to do it, but those are the 2 basic ones. Find people who know people that will get you there. David, you probably remember this, and I don't remember the gentleman's name. This was probably a year ago at one of the PSG meetings. He stood up and he mentioned that he had gone through 4 layers of people before he got in front of the hiring manager. That's the most I've ever heard. Okay, so connection to connection to connection to connection to the hiring manager before he finally got the position. So again, it's forensics, it's being aggressive in terms of at least making the contacts and then keeping a conversation going. So sometimes it's easier, like my friend Jeff, sometimes it's not. But all I can say is keep at it, keep as many of these games going with as many different types of positions, and ultimately you'll be successful. Okay, and I just have one quick question here, and I can't see anybody, so I can't see if you're raising your hands or not, but how many of you are in sales? Just show of hands. Actually, I can see a few of you. The answer to this is kind of obvious. Everybody is. Okay, when you're in job search, everybody's in sales. And I find that people who have more technical backgrounds, who may be more introverted, have a more difficult time going about this. But those of you who have been in sales know exactly what this is. This is a marketing and sales exercise. And you need to get comfortable with your own self-promotion because really nobody else is going to do it better than you can. Okay, let me go back to, so reinvention. And I don't know, I know I've recognized a few of your names, but don't know any of you personally, but You should consider this, especially if your function, role, industry, or experience are not in demand. When I first came to New Jersey back in the late 80s, pharmaceuticals and telecom were all the rage. But as all of you know, those industries have gone through their peak periods and they're on their downsides, and there are a lot of acquisitions and mergers and companies going out of business, et cetera, et cetera. Retail is going through the same thing. I kind of look at it like buggy whips were maybe 120 years ago when the Ford Model Ts were first coming out. So when you start thinking about how those industries come and go, ask yourself, are there industries that you could get into that would be more profitable for you going forward? And everybody can still learn new things. In 7 years of doing job fairs, I've met one web app developer. If you look at what artificial intelligence and the Internet of Things are all about, some experts say that in the next 3 to 5 years, there'll be more technological change that will impact all of us than there have been in the last 25. Think about that. The next 3 to 5 more than the last 25. Get in front of the wave as best you can, and that will serve you in a good way. How many of you have a plan B? I talk about this a lot with some clients, not all of them, but plan B could be, are you doing real estate? Do you have other investments? Do you have a multi-level marketing company that you're involved with that can generate some additional income? Some people are driving Uber off and on to make sure that they have enough income. So it's all these things can happen just to make sure that you have income in between your plan A positions. So I'm going to switch gears a little bit and just talk about, how do we all fit into the macro of what the job market is all about? The majority of people on this call, I would imagine, fit into the bottom right quadrant of this diagram that says 1.7 billion people work in services. And some of you may have work in industrial jobs, et cetera, et cetera. But just keep in mind of what the 7 billion people around the world are doing at this particular time and where you fit in. Where are you in terms of the generations in the workplace? This is a slide I found a couple of years ago, and I found it to be incredibly accurate in terms of the benefits that people from different age groups can provide. Baby boomers, more on executive presence, but far less on tech savviness. They also, for instance, the Gen X, generating revenue, adaptability, collaboration, problem solving, et cetera, et cetera. I found it to be one of the most important things about people who are baby boomers. When you get faced with the quote unquote age discrimination, what is it that happens that you can demonstrate to people that you can actually do the job? First thing is you have to have a current skill set. Second thing is you have to be able to work with people of all ages. Third, you have to have the energy to show up on Monday morning in whatever way that means and get the job done. And the fourth thing is you'll need to be flexible enough to change certain objectives based on companies changing, because they all switch on a dime with no apparent warning these days. And you've all seen this, I'm sure. I'm going to switch gears again and talk about, depending on what stage of life you're at, this could be the time when you're saying to yourself, I want to make sure that I do what I want to do more than what others have wanted me to do up to this point. There was a study done.
Bill, excuse me, we have
another question. Yeah, go ahead.
Just before you get into this, this is from Michael. Everyone is looking for someone with experience. How do you break into something new?
Depending on the circumstances, I've seen three things, and I've done all three of them. Number one is get your new credentials in whatever way that means. That could be some online courses. It could be, well, everything is online today, but it doesn't necessarily have to be a 2-year MBA degree, but some additional credentials that would substantiate it. Number two is do things as a volunteer that will help you gain the skills that you need to demonstrate that you can do that job somewhere else. And then number three, do some internships. And I know that internships are typically for, those in college and everything else, but after the market crash, I spent 6 months doing a part-time internship with a company that does the technology that we're using right now, which back then was brand new. It was just when Skype was coming out. So those are the three ways that I can suggest to you. There may be others. And I would also say connect with people who are experts in the field that you're looking to get into, and then you'll know about what the landmines are and be able to avoid them before you get started. Okay. And David just posted an interns over 40 link. So I've not seen that before, but I will check it out after we get off the call.
Job search page, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So a hospice nurse who had been doing this for many, many years interviewed, if that's the right way to say it, many of her patients before they passed on. And these are the 5 main items that they talked about. 1, I'd wish I'd had the courage to live a life true to myself and not the life others expected. Wish I didn't work so hard. I put that in capital letters because I'm sure all of you have gone through that phase of your careers. Wish I'd had the courage to express my feelings. Wish I'd stayed in touch with my friends, and wish that I had let myself be happier. All those things ultimately, when you're looking backwards from your hospice bed, are going to be the things that are the most important. And here's another important career lessons that I have found, again, combining a bunch of things that I've seen from several different sources. Life is short. Your social networks matter a lot. Don't sacrifice your health for success because it's not worth it. None of the best moments of your life happen in front of a computer screen. Always keep learning, diversify. Remember, you can go fast alone, but much further together. Worrying doesn't achieve anything. Failure is not an end, and happiness is a journey as much as it is a destination. I have a picture of my mother who passed away last December and her only great-grandchild. And one of the things she talked about when she was in a nursing home and in hospice, she was in a nursing home for over 5 years, is what was the legacy that she wanted to leave behind. And her biggest thing is my kids, and she had 6, and my grandkids. And I would ask you, to use a golf analogy, are you on the front 9 or the back 9? I'm going to guess that most of the people on this call are on the back 9, unless you live to 120. And then how many days old are you? Right now I'm about 22,300. My mother finished at 32,219. Why do I bring this up? For a couple of reasons. Years come and go, but everybody knows what 24 hours is. You can always wrap your arms around what a day is. Are you doing things every day that are moving you closer toward your stated objective? And I don't mean just in job search, I just mean life in general. Is this transition period the opportunity you've been given to make some necessary changes, whatever those might be? Could be to your health, could be to your finances, could be whatever it might be. Pursue something you've always loved, or do something you've never done before. You know, Alex was saying earlier on that he's okay with money, but he doesn't have any more time. This puts the sense of urgency into people. Mortality and the view of mortality certainly does that. So if there are things that you haven't done that you really wanted to do, take a trip to to a faraway place, or, go see some relatives that you haven't seen in a long time, whatever it might be, keep those in the front of your mind during this transition period. Another article that I found, this was several years ago, New York Times did a 1-week survey of 147 candidates. And they asked them to put in 5 or 10-minute increments what were their activities during the course of a day. And there were things there like, hygiene, cooking meals, shopping, recreation, working out, whatever. And ironically enough, among the survey participants, the average was less than an hour and a half a day on job search. And there may be a good reason for that in certain cases, especially, again, you have an aging parent that you need to take care of, or you have some other specific thing that is going to occupy the majority of your time. Certainly there are reasons for it. But overall, what I have found to be a way around this is to keep a calendar and keep your task list up to date so that you can keep yourself targeted on what job or what new career or position that you're going to be looking for. And why? A combination of internal and external factors, but the internal factor is probably more important than anything. So as you're going through your job search, and it's not fun at times. I've been through extended unemployment twice in my life, learned a lot about myself, some things I liked, some things I didn't like, but the one thing that I realized is that whatever was going on in my life at that time is not nearly as severe as much of the world's population. Where were all of you on September 11th, 2001, and where were you on April 15th of 2013? Okay, I grew up in the Boston area. I thought my youngest sister was going to be at the finish line, which is where she used to meet some of her uh, graduates from Simmons College. That year, she didn't happen to go. She would have been within 50 feet of that event. So I would only ask you is where were you on these days? How did they impact your life? And what did you do differently going forward? And how did that impact your view of the world? Sometimes the bad things that happen in our lives put us directly on the path to the best things that will ever happen to us. There are two types of pain in the world: pain that hurts you and pain that changes you. The great philosopher Oprah Winfrey: I trust that everything happens for a reason, even if we are not wise enough to see it. Zig Ziglar, who passed away a few years ago: it's not what happens to you that matters, it's how you respond to what happens to you that makes the difference. A shorter version of that: life is 10% of what happens to you and 90% of how you react to it. I'm sure you know of people who have come from some ridiculously bad backgrounds, other countries. A friend of mine who is a very successful New York Life executive came over from Sri Lanka with $28 in his pocket and a suitcase and a backpack. Within 2 days, his backpack and his money was stolen, and all he had left was the suitcase. But he made it to become one of the most successful New York Life executives in the country. A guy named Andy Reid, I don't know if any of you follow the NFL, was the coach of the Philadelphia Eagles from 1999 to the 2012 season. And after a 4-12 season, he lost his position. They let him go. But that wasn't the worst thing that happened to him that year. Tragically, he lost a son who was an assistant coach on the team to an overdose back in August. So the two worst things that could happen to him in his life happened within a few months. Sure enough, when he was out in the available market, the Kansas City Chiefs called and they interviewed him, and then he started the following season in 2013. They started 9-0, and they made the playoffs for the first time in 15 years. They made the playoffs every year after that, and as many of you probably know, they were Super Bowl champions last February. An entire sea of water can't sink a ship unless it gets inside the ship. Similarly, the negativity of the world can't put you down unless you allow it to get inside you. This kind of lines up with what Joey's presentation was last week. A bad attitude is like a flat tire. You can't go anywhere until you change it. If opportunity doesn't knock, build a door. I've had several clients who were pounding on doors in a specific career area, even though the small voice in the back of their mind said, I really want to be doing something else. When they shifted to what they really wanted to be doing, the doors started opening up. They built their own door in ways that they hadn't considered. May or may not be important to you, but I found it to work for a lot of other people. If it doesn't open, it's not your door. I've had clients who have had 2 or 3 interviews in a couple of days. None of them turned out well. They get despondent, they get discouraged, depressed, whatever you want to call it. I'm saying, hey, that's 3 more no's on the way to yes. Treat it like that, and you're going to be in a lot better shape. I have willpower and determination. I'm very resilient, like a rock. Determination and perseverance move the world. Thinking that others will do it for you is a sure way to fail. Some of you may or may not be able to read this, but this was dated June 6th of 1907 to Mr. Albert Einstein. Your application for the doctorate has not been successful at this time, and you are not eligible for the position of associate professor. We feel that your conclusions about the nature of light and fundamental connection between space and time are somewhat radical. Overall, we find your assumptions to be more artistic than actual physics. Wonder what that guy felt like about 25 years later. If you're not willing to learn, no one can help you, but if you're determined to learn, no one can stop you. The difference between a successful person and others is not a lack of strength, not a lack of knowledge, but rather a lack of will. The size of your success is measured by the strength of your desire, the size of your dream, and most importantly, how you handle disappointments along the way. You look at any successful person, and I'll guarantee you there are many, many ups and downs and twists and turns in their journey. I want you to take a minute to look at this sentence and ask yourself, what is the first thing you saw? What's the first interpretation you had when you looked at it? And then the answer is here. Did you see life is nowhere or life is now here? Life is all about how we look at it. This is one of the more amazing quotes that I've ever seen, considering the source. Helen Keller, who was blind and deaf almost from birth, said, "Optimism is the faith that leads to achievement. Nothing can be done without hope and confidence." Some of you may have seen this meme before, but these 6 people who were destined, according to many others, to be failures, went on to become ridiculous successes in their fields. Albert Einstein, Michael Jordan, Walt Disney, Steve Jobs, Oprah Winfrey, and the Beatles. I kind of like the statement there. Decca Recording said, "We don't like their sound. They have no future in show business." Remember that as you're thinking about what your own successes and failures have been. So what have I found? These are things that I have found both through my clients and through my own personal experience to keep you motivated during job search. For me, enjoyable and vigorous exercise is a really important thing. A brisk walk. I happen to be able to do CrossFit 4 or 5 days a week. My joints are still cooperating, so I'm grateful for that. Healthy nutritional meals, spiritual activities in whatever way that means, reconnect with God and nature. And sometimes it's good to just walk outside on a clear night and notice what's up in the sky. And notice that all of that has been set there years and years and years before you got here, but you can see that you're part of the incredible order of the world as well. Do something creative that you really enjoy. Some of you may enjoy sports or cooking or some kind of painting or singing or playing musical instruments, whatever. Focus on that. Take breaks. Thomas Edison used to take breaks to play an instrument between his very, very arduous work that he was doing on numbers of experiments. Do everything possible to avoid both people and organizations with a syndrome that I've called ACRIS. I spent a lot of years in the pharmaceutical industry, so this is a self-invented abbreviation here. It stands for Acute Cranial Rectal Inversion Syndrome. Okay, so if you run into people or organizations that have that, stay away. Okay, sometimes people have it intermittently. They get over it. Sometimes they don't. But the thing is, you want to be around positive people and around people who are going to help you get to where you want to be, and vice versa, as quickly as you can. Regular laughter. Find a few good movies. There are several that came out in the 80s and 90s that are, kind of my go back to, like Caddyshack and Stripes and a few of these other ones. They don't have to have Bill Murray in them, but you know what you laugh at. And if you want to, again, get the endorphins going and start feeling better about things, spend an hour or two just watching a good, funny movie. Do something you've never done before and explore. It's easy to sit in the 4 walls of wherever you are, especially over the last 8 months, and just say, well, I'm stuck here. Get out and do something that you've never done before. Open your eyes to the experience, be present, and connect with it. And that will rejuvenate you as far as your job search is concerned. Oh, somebody says, what is ACRIS again? It's Acute Cranial Rectal Inversion Syndrome. There's another meaning for that, but I will not do the colloquial interpretation.
Oh, excuse me, Bill. There's another question from Mike.
Yeah.
How do you deal with the requirement of a skill that is difficult to meet? An example is 10 years of Zoom experience. That's only an example, but I've seen similar types of requirements.
I don't know what to say about 10 years of Zoom experience, because Zoom hasn't really been out long enough to have 10 years of Zoom experience.
Right. That's the point I think he's making is.
Yeah, I know. And I guess the best way that I can say it is that if you can demonstrate proficiency in that as opposed to a time element, and in other words, you're expert in it, even though you've only been doing it 2 or 3 years, that may be able to get you past it. You know, there are some companies that believe that you have to have an MBA in a certain subject area in order to be qualified to do their job. Some companies will look past it, some companies will not. I work with a lot of clients who don't have an undergraduate degree. And oftentimes I say to them, well, if that's going to be their criteria, sometimes you may not want to work there. You may not want to be in the situation where they're going to, you know, be red flagging you at every point along the way because you don't have a particular credential. As long as you have enough successes and accomplishments that demonstrate that you can not only show the skills, but that you've made a significant impact, that usually is the best way around it. On the other hand, there are those companies who will just block you at the pass. You can't get over the bridge or get in the door without certain skill sets or experiences. And I wish I had a better answer than that, other than what I just did, but that's what I've found both with myself and other clients that I've worked with.
Another thing that can work is look for certifications. It's not likely you'll get a degree in something that's new, but there are probably some companies that have certifications in newer skills and technologies.
Yep, fair enough. Okay, so another Zig Ziglar quote, and I really like this one. Fear has two meanings: forget everything and run, or face everything and rise. The choice is yours. When everything seems to be going against you, remember that airplanes take off against the wind, not with it. The struggle you're in today is developing the strength you need for tomorrow. When someone tells you that you can't, don't believe it. It's a reflection of their limitations, not yours. And this is particularly important for people who are really close to you. I'm talking spouses, parents, children, close relatives, very close friends, et cetera, et cetera. Sometimes you have to put those people off to the side if you know that you can accomplish a certain thing, but they don't believe you can. Joel Osteen, you can't live a positive life thinking negative thoughts, so dwell on the positive. Beautiful things happen when you distance yourself from the negative. This is from The Secret. I know that I've violated copyright laws by using this, but I'll go with it anyway. You're a magnet, and you become a magnet of wealth. You attract wealth. When you become a magnet of health, love, etc., joy, whatever it is you want, you bring it to you. Magnet comes first and manifestation second. There are studies done on frequencies, kind of like using your radio dial. If you're tuned into the right frequency, you're going to find people and situations that are aligned with what you're looking for. Just keep that in mind. Somebody from about 2,500 years ago, gratitude is not only the greatest of virtues, but the parent of all others. Cicero. And gratitude and attitude, I find, go hand in hand, not just because their alliteration is similar, but because they really do represent how you can look at the world in a positive way. You can rewire your brain to be happy by simply recalling 3 things you're grateful for every day for 21 days. If you've never done this, I recommend you do it. 3, and sometimes it's 5, you may be more than that. Whatever you're grateful for, do that for 21 days and read over your list. You'll be amazed at what it is that you're either taking for granted or you hadn't recognized that you can be truly grateful for. Gratitude is a powerful process for shifting your energy and bringing more of what you want into your life. Be grateful for what you already have, and you will attract more good things. What are you grateful for today? Gratitude is a powerful process for shifting your energy and more of what you want into your life. I mentioned that before. Asking you shall receive, seeking you will find. And I'm assuming that several of you know what the third part of this verse is. Knock and it shall be open to you. Focus more on the people who inspire you than the people who annoy you. You'll get much further in life. Another corollary to that is lose others' baggage as you're going through transition and your own. I made that up a few years ago. Still works. The best day of your life is the one in which you decide your life is your own. No apologies or excuses. No one to lean on, rely on, or blame. The gift is yours. It's an amazing journey. And you alone are responsible for the quality of it. This is the day your life really begins. Many of you have probably had days like this, and you probably made that decision, but it doesn't hurt to remake it on an ongoing basis. Not sure I'd find myself on this rock, but a good life is when you smile often, dream big, laugh a lot, and realize how blessed you are for what you have. Success is stumbling from one failure to another with no loss of enthusiasm. From a guy who pulled the UK through World War II. Dreams that you dare to dream really do come true, and this is not just from the Wizard of Oz, but every storm in your life is followed by a rainbow. Keep going. Each step may be harder, but don't stop because the view at the top is beautiful. For those of you who are familiar with this and may have seen it before, this is a 10-minute acceptance speech by Jim Valvano, who was the coach of the North Carolina State Wolfpack, and they won the NCAA title in 1983. 10 years later, he's up on stage with cancer running throughout his body. They had to walk him up and then walk him back down because he didn't have the strength to do it on his own. He stood up there, and if you have a chance to watch this, you can Google this or get on YouTube and his ESPY, the ESPYs acceptance speech. He got the award for courage that year. To me, there are three things we all should do every day. We should do this every day of our lives. Number one is laugh. You should laugh every day. Number two is think. You should spend some time in thought. And number three is you should have your emotions move to tears. Could be happiness or it could be joy. But think about it. If you laugh, you think, and you cry, that's a full day. That's a heck of a day. You do that 7 days a week, you're going to have something special. It sounds almost juvenile, too simple, too easy, but it's true. And if you spend the 10 minutes looking at that video, you can't help but at least nod your head in approval or maybe shed a tear because it was very, very good. I'll make a quick sidebar here on the donkey story. Some of you may have heard this before, but there was a donkey who was in an abandoned barn, and the old farmer left the door open. The donkey escaped and found its way to an old well and fell into it. The farmer couldn't find the donkey, finally heard it, went out to see the well, and realized there was no way that he could get the donkey out. Went and got a few of his neighbors, and they looked at each other and said, you know, this donkey's lived a good long life. Why don't we just bury him? So sure enough, they got their shovels, and they started throwing dirt on the donkey, and it was making all kinds of noise, heeing and hawing and everything else, and then it went silent. And what do you think happened after a couple hours? Well, probably several of you are saying he got out, and that is correct. So what's the moral of the story? Is it the absent-minded farmer who left the door open? Is it the cruel neighbors that wanted to bury the donkey? Is it the donkey that didn't see the well? No, it's this. If a jackass can do it, so can all of you. All right, so just keep that in mind as you're going through your job search. And that's pretty much, that's the presentation. You know, I want to just, take any questions that you may have about it. There is a position out there for you. There's a career field out there for you that fits. Keep in mind what the destination is, and you'll do well. Thoughts, questions?
Okay.
Bill, this is John Sampson. I wondered if you have any advice to this audience as they're going through their search as to how much time on a weekly basis they should spend on their job search.
The way I usually say this, I'm gonna couch it and then say my answer is 35 to 40 hours a week. Treat it as a full-time job. Now there are some situations where you may have a part-time job going, you may have other responsibilities, and your health may be compromised. Whatever it might be, take care of yourself first, because until you take care of yourself, you're not going to be presenting yourself in the best way in the job search. But my recommendation is to treat it like a full-time job and do a lot of self-care in between. Again, some of the things that I'd mentioned previously.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, and I'm looking in chat. There are no last questions in chat. If I missed any, I'm sorry, but so ask your questions in chat if you'd like.
I'm looking at Alex's comment about value proposition, and he's
Okay.
totally right. Totally right. Alex, I'm seeing your comment. Oh, and I forgot to mention how to reach out to me. Best way is on LinkedIn. It's Bill Amirault, Amirault. And I put my initials WF in there because there are a few other Bill Amiraults. That way you can reach out to me. It's probably the best way. And I will get back to you as soon as I can. I'm committed to coaching in a weekend-long webinar, so I may not be able to get back to you till Monday, but I will certainly do so.
And Michael has a question. I think it follows up your 35 to 40 weeks. Does that include time to do training?
Well,
35?
again,
Yeah.
I would say you know your own limitations, you know your own energy levels, you know what it is that you can accomplish in a given day. I have found I make my own schedule, and I have found that there are days when I'm going pedal to the metal, and then at 8 or 9 o'clock in the evening I say, whoa, I got to take a break. And if you can have days like that, great. Again, you manage your own time and schedule, but if you do the 35 to 40 hours a week and you do it efficiently, you're going to be successful. So I would say, Michael, if the training is 20, 25 hours a week in school, then I would say that's kind of tough to do job search while you're doing the some degree related training or something like that. But do the best you can.
There was a gentleman I knew a few years ago. We were both in job search, and he had that concept also of, looking for a job is a full-time job, and he felt he was becoming burnt out. And as we talked about it, it seemed like, he was heads down, he was committed, doing a lot of good things. And I asked him, kind of a silly question, do you ever take a break? And he said, no, it's a full-time job. I said, the last full-time job I was at, during the day I took breaks.
Yeah.
I said I went to the water cooler or the coffee room or took a lunch break. So, I think that you do need to take care of yourself. And, a 30, 35, 40-hour week does include personal breaks that you need to clear your mind or stay healthy.
100%. And again, when I find myself wavering, and this is how I notice for me, and you all may have different metrics or different ways of noticing, when I start making typos or start not attaching, like I'm sending an email with an attachment and I forget the attachment, or just simple things that I say, okay, time to just, the Knicks want to talk it over, as Marv Albert used to say. Just give yourself a break. Self-care is incredibly important through this whole process.
Yep. Michael, a different Michael has a question. What is the best way to go about going through a job search when you're taking care of someone whose daily routine has been affected by COVID?
Wow. I hope you have separate rooms that you can, or separate places within your home that you can operate from. That's a really difficult thing because at some level we've all been affected by COVID, but I'm assuming you mean somebody who actually has the symptoms or who may be just in and out of the hospital or something like that. Again, the best I can say is do whatever you need to take care of that person and take care of yourself. I mean, the balancing act that has to happen in order to make it work most effectively. I see another one from Joanne here. As an introvert, networking is very draining. I've learned to space out interactions, video and phone calls. Can you offer other suggestions for an introvert to excel in networking? Because everything has now been, we're confined to our home spaces. I mean, actually, Panera is allowing people to meet at 25% occupancy. So it's coming back slowly. But to immediate point to your question is, I have worked with clients who are introverts. You may be able to tell that I'm not. And one of the things that I've worked out with them is, if you want to communicate with me by email or by text message, I'm okay with that. Ultimately, you're going to have to get in front of people either on video or phone calls or in person. So again, manage your own, self-care is really important. If it's really draining for you as an introvert, then use other methods that don't drain your energy as much. That'd be my best recommendation. And the other suggestions, if you're good at keeping conversations open on LinkedIn and you can find your way into hiring managers or into organizations that way, then you can do it in a way that you're comfortable with. And then when you get on video and phone, you've already set up what it is that you can do to add value for that organization before you even get on the phone.
You know, I really like this question, and a couple things come to mind, not just for Joanne, but for anyone who's an introvert. I think there's a misconception about networking and introverts. I think networking is actually perfect for introverts. And so here's my observation. Introverts don't like big crowds, and I'm on the cusp on an introvert. But networking really works best as a one-on-one activity, not as an activity with big crowds. So you want to be more one-on-one. And as introverts, you know, often we're quiet. Well, that makes you a good listener. You'll be very effective in a one-on-one discussion. And, you know, we don't like to talk about ourselves when we're introverts. Well, that's terrific because you're going to be a good listener and a good helper of others. So I think being an introvert is really an asset when it comes to networking, and not to be afraid of it. So that's kind of my observation.
Well, and as you're saying that, David, when people recognize that you're interested in them and you're sincere about it and you're providing immediate feedback that says you're hearing them and that you're willing to help them in whatever way that means, they're going to be a whole lot more inclined to help you as well.
Yeah. So
Bill,
yeah.
I want to compliment you. I attended a number of your presentations, and yours always are full of information, and I equate it more than a double espresso in terms of a pick-me-up. I always walk away very, very energized and positive thinking, and yeah. So please, David, please bring him back frequently.
I hope we can all meet over a double espresso. That's going to be fun to watch.
Yeah, or a double something else one of these days. Yeah. So there are a couple other questions. Thanks, Alex, for your kind
Diana
words.
has a question. Yep.
I've been a stay-at-home mom for the last 20 years and have done a ton of volunteering. Present potential employers do not see the skill set transfer. Pursuing an MBA in event leadership, is that what I'm seeing? Or even leadership, I'm not sure what that is. What is your advice? Not sure how far along you are in your MBA, but this is something that I've encountered several times. I've never obviously been a stay-at-home mom. Okay.
Started my MBA.
You just started it. Okay.
Yes, I've been president of the Home and School for over 10 years. I've led women's Bible study for over 15. And no matter how many things I have run or been in charge of, nobody is seeing the transfer.
Well, this is the way that I would tell you if you're saying, again, I haven't seen your resume yet, but I believe this is a critical turning point. And it would go something like this. You can talk about leading the Homeschool Association or leading Bible studies or whatever, but what has been the impact? And I'll give you a couple examples. Let's say your Bible study started out with 5 people and you've grown it to 35 people. What did you do as part of that to recruit and enroll different participants in that? That then becomes a tangible, marketable skill as opposed to making the best of a hobby.
Well, I can answer that. At the beginning of Zoom, I increased Bible study virtually by 56%, and I now have a 4-state reach.
Okay, you answered the question. Okay, so expanded network and presentation or weekly presentation from X number of people locally to Y people in 4 states. Some version of that. Those are like metrics that nobody can argue with.
Okay.
And there may be more than that. If you want to talk offline, I can. Again, I don't know enough about your background yet.
But I reach you offline.
Again, LinkedIn. LinkedIn would be the best.
I'll connect on LinkedIn with you. Thank you.
Okay, sure. Barbara says, yeah, I'm looking at Barbara's question now. Putting this in measurable terms, is there a minimum number of companies you should research or apply to in a given week? This comes under the heading of quality is better than quantity. Okay, arguably you could get on LinkedIn or on ZipRecruiter and apply to 15 jobs in the time it's going to take me to answer this question. But there's no connection related to what you just did. What I would say is make sure your target is precise. Make sure it's something that you know you can get to the other destination in. And whatever, again, I don't know you, so I don't know what that means. And then I would say vet out all the companies in a certain industry within the geography that you are interested in, and really focus your energy on the A-list targets. That's going to be more productive to you than just amassing a different number of companies. And I'll use another example of that. You know, a lot of people are on LinkedIn just to gain connections. And there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, that way they see your posts and all this other kind of stuff. But it's far more relevant, I believe, to create some kind of relationship or some kind of conversation or interaction that you can use as a springboard to whatever else it might be. So again, quality is to me more important than quantity.
There's
Okay,
also a question from Frank. Any recommendations regarding how to use your time? LinkedIn, prospecting, online submission, job fairs, etc.
I'm assuming that you've done all of your part one, meaning your value proposition, resume, LinkedIn profile. I'm assuming all of that is exactly how you want it. And I would, what I would do is I would divide up your time allocations based on the general pie chart that I'm not showing you, obviously, but I'll describe it. Somewhere between 5 and 10% of available positions are filled by recruiters or staffing agencies. Somewhere between 20 and 30% are filled by online postings. You would think the number would be a lot higher than that. And I've seen these numbers for years. Somewhere between 60 and 75% are filled by either the networking capabilities of the candidate or of the hiring manager or the hiring company. Now, in some cases, that also includes promoting from within. Okay, so there are certain things you know, companies will post positions because they're required to for legal and regulatory purposes, and then they'll pull them down after 2 days. And all along, they've known that they want to promote somebody from another department. You can't really fight that. So I would allocate your time in those ways. You know, 60 to 70% toward outreach and networking, and I would include job fairs in that as well. And online submission, I would say, you know, 20, 25%. And, you know, again, I always say this to my clients: if you know that some position that you find online is an ideal fit for your background, you're obligated to do the online part. But equally, you're obligated to find your way in the side door through a friend of a friend, through a colleague of a friend, or colleague of a colleague, whatever it might be, so that your credentials can get on the top of the hiring manager's list as opposed to somewhere in the big stack. Okay.
Bill, I have a question, if I may.
Yes.
It's Joey. A great presentation. I'm gonna back Alex and say it's always entertaining and just some great stuff you presented. So thank you. Appreciate that.
Thank you, sir.
So you brought up that slide that shows the different generations in the workplace, the millennials, right. Gen X, right? I think it's an exciting time for all of us to be in the marketplace. Oh, look, you're going back. Great, thanks. So
yep. Okay.
I think this is exciting. The challenge I'm facing, and I suspect some of my brothers and sisters on this call as well are dealing with, is those of us who are the baby boomers are dealing with the challenge of, you know, you're overqualified, you're going to cost us too much money, and you're going to leave within 3 months when a better offer comes along. Excellent objections. I'm challenged with how to deal with them. Any ideas? Any thoughts?
Well, I've had that happen personally and with many clients that I've worked with. And the biggest thing that I can say is that the third one is the hardest. The one that says right. You're going to leave in 3 months when something else comes along. That's the hardest, because that's a mindset of the future that you can't necessarily change the person in front of you's perspective of what that means.
Right.
But the other two, you definitely can. Hey, look, you know I'm going to be here on Monday morning and I'm going to show up and I'm going to get the job done. You don't have to train me. I can hit the ground running. And this position, you know, may or may not be something. Let's just say if it's 3 or 4 levels below where you were, then I would say there's a real issue. But you can also say things like, at this time in my career, this is an ideal circumstance because whatever that might mean. Okay. If it means, like, for instance, you were a senior VP of sales, but you were traveling 90% of the time, you know, 10, 15 years ago, and you're looking for a regional manager position where you'd only travel 2 or 3 days a week or even less, then maybe there's some other component of the job that you can speak to that fits in with your total criteria. Okay, and the other thing is, and again, you have to say this and sincerely, is what is it about that company that made you come to an interview to talk about that particular job? I mean, what is it that is impressing you about them that makes you want to be there?
Right.
And I think if you answer in those situations, and we probably have some war stories to exchange offline. I'd be happy to do that.
Yes, we do.
At different times.
Yes,
But
we do.
Again, the other thing is, it's very difficult to adjust somebody's preconceived notion. You can be as logical and make as much sense and sincere and everything else as possible. You may or may not be able to convince the person otherwise. You never know. I mean, I ran into the situation. I'll just give you one example. I ran into a situation with somebody who was early 40s. I was about the same age when I interviewed, who had been with 2 companies and wanted to know why I had been with so many and wouldn't get off it. Okay, wouldn't get off it. All the experience that I have from these other companies and these other environments and circumstances will allow me to provide better perspective in this position. Person wouldn't get off it.
Right.
I did the best I could.
Right. And my war story is, I've dealt with people who say you're going to leave in 3 months, and I said this, and as soon as I said it, I wanted to retract it, and I couldn't. But there are countless stories of 30-year-olds, God bless them, who've had 4 jobs since they graduated from college 8 years ago. Right. But how do you? It's a mind. You're right. The mindset is so hard to break. You're right.
Well, there's another response here from Sten that says, I'm looking for a career, not a job. And in some cases, if that career is aligned with what you've been doing before, and it just happens to be a new job, then that may or may not be the logical thing to be saying. But I like the answer.
Right. All right.
There's a question from Michael. Since no one sees me other than as a Fortran programmer, how do I find target companies? Most companies do not want clients to know they're running their business on a legacy system.
2 jobs back, my boss told me it was no one's business that we ran payroll on Fortran, even when clients would ask what we were using. Hey, Michael, we may be the only 2 people on the phone who can program in Fortran. I did that.
I can, yeah.
Oh, okay, David. All right. So, but I did that back in college. Here's what I would say. When I was talking about ageism a little while ago, the 4 things that you can do to make it so that ageism doesn't bite you is, the first thing is current skills. And I don't know enough about you to know what your other skills are. Clearly, you've been working in a Fortran environment, but all of the logic and setting up process optimization and improvements that goes into programming in Fortran goes into programming in every other language. Okay, so all I would say is, if your skills need to be, updated or refined or whatever, then that would be my initial recommendation. That said, I wouldn't apologize for being somebody who knows how to program in Fortran. There are still mechanics out there that are fixing cars from the 60s and 70s. Okay, so that's not a bad thing, but I think it would be supplemented if your credentials were more current and you could demonstrate that early on in the conversation or early on in your resume.
Okay, there's a question from Barbara. What are the pros and cons to working with a recruiter? Is it more advantageous to work with a recruiter?
The definite answer is maybe, because here's the thing: the recruiters, if they're worth anything, particularly retained recruiters, have an insight into the company that you're not going to find otherwise. If you fit what the company is looking for, the recruiter can be your greatest ally. They can also be the easiest people in the world who ghost you. Okay, so I've been placed by recruiters 5 times in my career. They don't want me now. I'm not on their radar as somebody that they would want to fill the positions in. I would say that just manage your expectations with recruiters, because again, if you fit what they're looking for, or you fit what their client is looking for, you're going to be their best friend. They're going to go to bat for you because they don't get paid until they place somebody. Well, if they're retained, they're going to get paid, but they need to place somebody. Is it more advantageous to work with a recruiter? Maybe, maybe not. You know, some companies will post positions only through a recruiter, and they're pleased with that. Others will do both. There'll be contingency recruiters, and they'll be posting and all this other kind of stuff. So it gets to be a little bit of a mixture as to what it is. I would just say manage your expectations with recruiters. They can be your best friend, or not so much your worst enemy, but they can be people who just don't have any interest in you. And it's all related to how well do you fit what their clients are looking for. Okay.
And I think John had a question. Yep, there he is.
Bill, I wondered if, assuming we get to the place where we have an interview, are there any specific questions that we absolutely should be asking the interviewer?
If there are 4 questions that if you don't come out of the interview knowing the answers to them, then I think that you missed the opportunity. Now, sometimes you don't have enough time to ask all 4, but I'll put them out there. The first one is something something not constructive, something of substance about the interviewer. Like, one of the questions that I like to ask somebody is, you know, how did you get started with this company, and what are the key issues you're facing? Some version of that. They'll talk for, you know, oftentimes several minutes just on those 2 things. The second thing is, obviously, what are the key aspects of the job, and what are the metrics that you're going to be either responsible for, or what are the expectations for you? The third thing is, you want to know what the next steps are in the interview process. You may be interviewing with a screener up front, and just how do you manage each other's expectations? So what are the next steps, and when should I follow up? That's kind of like 3A and 3B. And then there's another question that I only recommend people using when they've gone through enough of the interview phase, and you know you're in front of the hiring manager. You know you're in front of the person who's going to be ultimately making the decision. And it goes something like this: after you've presented your case, and Alex said in the thread here, your job is to convince the other party that you are their solution, that you have what they need. In other words, why should they hire you? He's 100% right. But here is the response, or here is the question that I would recommend. Use your own words, but I've had clients use this, and it's been very, very successful because it gets people off the dime. It goes something like this: based on our conversations, I'm very, very interested in this position. Is there anything else about me or my background that you would need to know such that I'm the #1 candidate?
Yeah.
Let them sit with that. Let them sit with that. And sometimes people will avoid it, but sometimes people say, well, I forgot to ask you about. Make sure that you walk out of there with no stones unturned. Make sure they know as much about you and why you're the right solution as possible. Anyone else? I'm reading yours, David. Look to see if legacy programming languages have upgraded data structures. Oh man, a version of object-oriented COBOL. This is flashbacks.
Yeah, so there are some industries that still use legacy languages, and so the companies that support the languages have maintained versions of the software or the apps. So it may be possible, but the digging is going to be a little bit harder, I guess.
Exactly. Diana, it says, can you repeat the last question for the interviewer? Again, you need to know you're in front of the hiring manager. You need to know you're in front of the decision maker, because if you're not, then the question kind of goes, it doesn't have as much traction as it does. Here it is. Based on the conversations that we've been having, I'm very interested in this position. Is there anything else about me or my background that you would need to know such that I'm the #1 candidate?
The other value of that, Bill, is that you've expressed an interest in the job to the hiring manager. If you don't do that, when you walk away, he or she may be thinking, I wonder if Bill is even interested in working here.
Right.
Right?
Yep.
Again, is there anything else about me or my background that you would need to know such that I'm the #1 candidate?
Well, I just posted again, Bill, your LinkedIn connection
Yes.
information, the link. So that's going to be there. So hopefully people can just take that right off the chat, or of course, search for Bill, WF Amirault, search for Bill on LinkedIn and connect with him and contact him. He'll be happy to speak with you offline. But Bill, your programs are always inspirational, not just teaching us how to be inspired in our job search, but it's always an inspired program. And so thank you very much. I'm glad that you're a friend of our organization. Very appreciate it very, very much.
Oh, you're quite welcome. David, you run a really good group. It's light, but it's serious, and it also, I've seen a number of other presentations, and you bring in some good speakers, and that's a reflection on you as well.
Well, thank you very much. That's kind to say. So just before we wrap up, in a few minutes, we'll formally end the presentation portion of the meeting, but we'll keep the session open without the recording on. I do want to let you know that we did post Bill's slides. There are on our website, psgofmercercounty.org. On the right side of the screen is a link. The link is called Meeting Presentation Documents, and in there are all of our presentations. And so we did put the slides up. You can go back to them. A little later today, this recording will be on our YouTube channel. So just look for us as PSG of Mercer County on YouTube, or on the right side of our website, you can click the link to YouTube because we have the logo on our website. It goes to our page as well. I want to let you know who's visiting us in the coming weeks. Next week is November 20th, and Colleen Ferry will be here. Rise Above the Competition, an interactive lesson on interviewing. So great program from Colleen. She is a coach as well. And so that's what we will be doing next week, Thursday, on the 20th. The following week, Friday the 20th. It's Friday the 20th. The following week is Friday the 27th. That is the Thanksgiving week, Black Friday. So we will actually not be meeting. We've decided to take the week off and allow us all to be with our families in the safest way possible. So we will not be meeting on the 27th. Of course, if you do feel you need to revisit a meeting or a topic, you can view any of our YouTubes. We have all of our programs since March 20th, all on YouTube. And then we'll be back on December 20th. Jeff Benaldi will be here. I'm so looking forward to him presenting. I met him a few months ago, had a terrific conversation. He's an entrepreneur and an explorer, and he'll talk about how to create a plan that aligns with your passion. So great programs that we have in the coming weeks. Other meetings and groups that we have, friends of ours, the Breakfast Club of New Jersey is meeting tomorrow morning, 8 o'clock in the morning. thebreakfastclubnj.com, thebreakfastclubnj.com. So you will be able to listen to Bill LaChance will be presenting money-saving strategies during a career transition, including health insurance, taxes, college costs, and investment fees. It is the Medicare enrollment period right now. He will be talking about Medicare a bit as well. So you can hear that program. It's free to attend. Just get the link on thebreakfastclubnj.com. New Jersey Job Seekers, the oldest continuously running job seeker support group in New Jersey, meets each Tuesday at 7:30 in the evening. Excuse me. I posted the link on our group's LinkedIn group. So it's on the PSG of Mercer County LinkedIn group. The link is there. It's the same link every week to get to their meeting, Tuesdays at 7:30. Our cousin organizations, PSG of Central New Jersey, meets on Monday at 10:30, every Monday at 10:30, psgcnj.biz, psgcnj.biz, and PSG of Morris County. They meet every Wednesday at 9:30 in the morning, psgmc.org, psgmc.org. So that's what's coming up over the next couple of weeks. So hope everyone will be available to see some of those programs as well. So once again, thank you to Bill. Appreciate you being a part of our group and one of our presenters. Thank you everyone who was able to participate with us today. Hope you were able to stay safe and healthy over these next months and weeks. But in the meantime, we will look to see you virtually either next week or at other programs as well. And remember, we will keep the meeting open right after this session. But in the meantime, I will just say bye, everybody.